The phone call came at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was standing in my kitchen looking at a pot roast that had been cooking since 3 o'clock when Vincent called to cancel dinner. Again, "Dad, I'm sorry, but we're running late on the Henderson electrical job. Rain delayed us all week." I turned off the oven and set my phone on the counter. "My name's Eugene Hartfield. I'm 57 years old, and I've been eating dinner alone in this small apartment for the past 4 years. Not something I planned on when I retired from 30 years of investigating insurance claims, but life doesn't ask what you planned on." "No problem, son. We'll do it next week." But then Vincent said something that stopped me cold. "You know, Dad, maybe it's time we talked about why you're still living in that place when I built you a perfectly good house." I sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where Joyce and I used to eat breakfast every morning before she got sick. What house? The silence on the other end stretched longer than it should have. "Dad, the house on Maple Street. The one I've been working on for you since Mom passed. Beverly said she gave you the keys 2 years ago. Beverly, my daughter-in-law. The woman who remembered every birthday, helped with my wife Joyce's medical appointments when I couldn't get away from work, and always seemed to have everything under control. The woman who organized the funeral, handled the casseroles from neighbors, and made sure I wasn't drowning in paperwork during those first terrible months. Son," I said slowly, "Beverly has never given me any keys to any house." That's when everything started to unravel. Vincent came over an hour later with a folder full of papers and a look on his face I hadn't seen since he was 12 years old, and broke my workshop window with a baseball. He spread the documents across my kitchen table like he was laying out electrical blueprints for a major job. "Dad, look at this. Property deed transferred to a family trust 3 years ago. Renovation receipts totaling $47,000. I put in a full electrical system, new kitchen, even that covered porch you always wanted." I picked up the deed. Sure enough, there was my name on a trust document I'd never seen before. The signature looked like mine, but I had no memory of signing anything. "Vincent, I'm telling you, I know nothing about this." He pulled out his phone and called Beverly right there at the table. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. He tried again. Same thing. "She's at her book club," he said, but his voice had that edge it gets when he's trying to figure out why a circuit breaker keeps tripping. Here's the thing about spending 30 years investigating insurance fraud: you develop instincts. When people's stories don't match the paperwork, when there are gaps in timelines, when someone avoids phone calls at convenient times, I felt that familiar itch between my shoulder blades that meant something wasn't adding up. "Vincent, I need you to show me this house." We drove through neighborhoods I knew well, past the dry cleaner where I'd been smelling chemicals for 4 years, past the grocery store where I bought food for one person every week. The house on Maple Street was in a development that had gone up after Joyce died. Nice place, blue siding, white trim, and yes, a covered porch that looked exactly like something I would have wanted. There was a silver Toyota Camry in the driveway. Through the front window I could see a flat-screen TV and furniture that definitely wasn't mine. A woman in her 30s was visible in the kitchen cooking dinner like she lived there. "Vincent," I said, "there are people living in my house." My son stared at that house like he was seeing it for the first time. "Dad, I installed every outlet in that place. I ran the wiring for that porch light myself. I built that kitchen thinking about how you like to cook Sunday dinners." The next morning I did what I'd been trained to do for 3 decades. I started building a case file. First stop, County Recorder's Office. I knew the clerk there, Betty Morrison, from my days investigating property damage claims. She pulled the records without asking too many questions. "Eugene, you looking into something for your consulting work?" "Something like that, Betty. I need everything on 247 Maple Street." The property records told an interesting story. The house had been purchased by Vincent 4 years ago, right after Joyce's funeral. Renovated over 10 months, then transferred to the Hartfield Family Trust. But there were additional documents I hadn't expected: utility transfers, property tax filings, and business licenses for something called Maple Street Rentals LLC. I wrote down the LLC information and ran it through the state database on Betty's computer. Registered agent, Beverly Coleman. Coleman was Beverly's maiden name. That familiar itch was turning into a full-blown alarm. "Betty, can you print me copies of everything? I think there might be some irregularities here." She gave me that look she used to give when we worked together on questionable claims. "Eugene, you be careful now. Family business gets messy fast." Over the next week, I spent time learning my daughter-in-law's routine. Insurance investigation taught me patience. I parked across from the house during different times of day, taking photos with the digital camera I'd bought after retiring. The same silver Camry came and went on a regular schedule. A young couple looked to be in their early 30s. On Thursday, I saw Beverly's red Honda pull into the driveway. She walked up to the front door like she owned the place, which technically I was starting to suspect she did in every way that mattered. The young woman answered the door, handed Beverly an envelope, and they chatted for about 10 minutes. Friendly conversation, like a landlord checking in with good tenants. I followed her car to the bank on Elm Street and watched her walk into the drive-thru. When she left, I went inside and had a conversation with Maria Santos, the teller I'd known for 15 years. Eugene, how are you doing? Haven't seen you in a while. I'm good, Maria. Listen, this might sound strange, but I think someone might be using my name for banking without my knowledge. Is there any way to check if there are accounts I don't know about? Maria's expression got serious. Banking fraud was something they took seriously, especially when it involved elderly customers. After checking my ID and asking some security questions, she ran a search through their system. Eugene, there's an account here under Maple Street Rentals LLC with you listed as a beneficiary. Monthly deposits of $1,400 for the past 30 months. I did the math in my head, 30 months of $1,400 monthly deposits. That's $42,000 sitting in an account I'd never heard of, while I'd been living in a 2-bedroom apartment that cost me $850 a month and eating pot roast for one. Maria, I need to see those account records. She printed out 3 years of statements, regular monthly deposits always for $1,400, always on the 5th of the month, and regular withdrawals, large amounts, usually $5,000 or $10,000 at a time, always made by Beverly Coleman. I thanked Maria and walked out to my truck. For 30 years, I'd investigated people who thought they could beat the system, who believed their stories were clever enough to fool someone who made a living finding the truth. I'd seen every variation of deception, every creative way people justified taking what wasn't theirs, but I'd never expected to find it in my own family. That evening, I called Vincent, son, we need to have a conversation. All 3 of us, and I need you to bring Dennis. Dad, what's this about? You sound different. Just trust me on this one. Sunday dinner, 6 p.m. Tell Beverly it's important. Beverly answered the phone this time when Vincent called her. I could hear her voice through the speaker. That same calm tone she'd used when explaining Joyce's medical bills to the insurance company. Oh, hi, Eugene. Vincent says you want to have dinner Sunday. That sounds lovely. Should I bring anything? Beverly, tell Vincent that we're having dinner Sunday at 6 p.m. and tell him to bring those trust documents, all of them. The pause before she answered lasted just a beat too long, of course. We'll see you then. Over the next few days, I did more digging. I drove by the house at different times, documenting the patterns. The young couple, I learned their names were Jason and Amanda Miller, had been living there for exactly 30 months. They kept a neat yard, put their trash out on Tuesday mornings, and had a small vegetable garden in the back. They looked like good tenants. I also spent some time at the diner on State Street, the kind of place where retired guys like me drink coffee and read the paper. Word gets around in a small town, and I mentioned casually to a few people that I was thinking about moving to Maple Street. Oh, you mean near where the Millers live, said Ed Kowalski, who used to run the hardware store. Nice young couple. They rent from some property management company. Shame, really. That house was clearly built for someone older. Has one of those ramps for the front porch. Grab bars in the bathroom. Someone put a lot of thought into making it accessible. Grab bars in the bathroom, ramps. Vincent had built that house thinking about me getting older, thinking about Joyce's final months when she needed help getting around. He'd planned for my future in ways I hadn't even considered. Sunday came, and for the first time in months, I cooked for a family. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, the kind of meal Joyce used to make for special occasions. I set the table with my good dishes and put my case file folder next to my water glass. When they arrived, Dennis ran straight to me like always, full of 8-year-old energy and stories about his week at school. Grandpa, Mom said you wanted to talk about important grown-up stuff. Are you moving closer to us? We'll see, buddy. Why don't you set up your tablet in the living room while the adults talk? Beverly was wearing a blue dress I'd seen her wear to church. She'd brought homemade rolls and a bottle of wine, the same brand Joyce used to like. Vincent carried the folder of documents like he was handling evidence for a court case. I waited until Dennis was settled with his game, then closed the kitchen door. Beverly, I said, sitting down across from her, I think there are some things we need to discuss. I opened my folder and laid out the documents methodically, the way I'd done hundreds of times in conference rooms with insurance adjusters and lawyers, property records, bank statements, photos of the house with the silver Camry in the driveway, business registration for Maple Street Rentals LLC. Timeline of deposits and withdrawals. Vincent's face went through several expressions as he looked at the evidence. Beverly sat very still, her hands folded in her lap like she was waiting for a verdict. Beverly, I said in the same tone I'd used for 30 years when presenting claim evidence, would you like to explain why my house has been rented to strangers for 30 months? She looked at the documents for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. my brother Roger was in trouble, bad trouble. The kind where people show up at your apartment with baseball bats and make it clear what happens if you don't pay. Vincent was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. How much trouble? $35,000 in gambling debts. To the wrong people, street people, not casino people. Beverly's hands were shaking slightly. Now he came to me terrified. Eugene, these weren't people who send collection letters. These were people who break kneecaps. I kept my voice level, so you decided to rent out my house. I panicked. I looked at that empty house, sitting there with no one living in it, and I thought, just temporarily, just until Roger could get back on his feet and pay these people off. Beverly, Vincent said slowly, that house was for Dad. We talked about this. I spent almost $50,000 making it perfect for him. I know. She was crying now, but I'd seen enough people cry during investigations to know the difference between manipulation and genuine remorse. This was genuine. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that I'd figure out how to fix it before anyone found out. Every month I told myself, next month I'll tell them. But the months kept passing and Roger needed more money and the tenants were so good to the house. I pulled out the bank statements. Beverly, this account shows deposits totaling $42,000 over 30 months. Where did that money go? Most of it to Roger's debt. The rest to house maintenance, property taxes, insurance. I have receipts for everything. Vincent was looking back and forth between the documents and his wife like he was trying to trace a complex wiring problem. Beverly, Dad's been living in that apartment for 4 years while strangers have been sleeping in the house I built specifically for him. Do you understand what that means? The room got quiet, except for the sound of Dennis playing some game in the living room. Normal kid sounds from another world where adults didn't lie to each other about houses and money and family obligations. I understand, Beverly said finally. I understand that I took something that wasn't mine to take. I understand that I made Roger's problem into Eugene's problem without asking permission. And I understand that there's no excuse for that. She looked directly at me. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't looking away or making excuses. I'm prepared to face whatever consequences you think are fair. Here's what 30 years of investigation teaches you. There's a difference between someone who got caught and someone who knows they did wrong. Beverly wasn't making excuses or trying to minimize what she'd done. She was owning it. But understanding the difference between genuine remorse and tactical apology doesn't mean there shouldn't be consequences. Beverly, I want those renters out of my house in 60 days. I want every penny of rental income transferred to an account with my name on it. I want a full accounting of every expense, every deposit, every decision that was made about property that has my name on it. She nodded, yes, and I want you to attend financial counseling, both of you, because if you could hide this from Vincent for 30 months, there might be other things I don't know about. Vincent was quiet, processing everything like he processes electrical problems methodically, checking each connection. Dad, there's something else you should know. I've been sending money to Beverly every month to help with your living expenses while we were getting the house ready. She told me you needed help with rent and groceries. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach that came with discovering a claim was bigger than it first appeared. How much money, son? $600 a month for 30 months. I thought I was helping take care of you. Beverly's face went white. That was another $18,000 on top of the rental income. She'd been collecting money from Vincent to supposedly help me while collecting rent from strangers living in my house. Beverly, I said carefully, where did that money go? Some of it to Roger's debt, some to the house maintenance, some, she stopped and looked at her hands, some to our own bills when Vincent's business was slow last winter. Vincent stood up from the table like he'd been hit with 240 volts. Beverly, you told me Dad needed help. I was working double shifts to send that money. I know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, Vincent said. Sorry doesn't give Dad back 4 years of living in that apartment when he could have been here. I watched my son pace around the small kitchen and I saw something I recognized from my own career, the moment when someone realizes the full scope of deception they're dealing with. Vincent wasn't just angry about the house, he was angry about being manipulated, about being made complicit in something he never would have agreed to. Vincent, I said, sit down, let's figure out how to fix this. He sat, but his jaw was tight. Dad, I don't even know where to start. I feel like I don't know my own wife. Beverly was crying steadily now, but quietly. Vincent, everything I did was to protect this family. Roger's debt, your business struggles, making sure we could keep up with the mortgage. I was trying to hold everything together by lying to everyone, he said. By handling problems you didn't need to worry about. That wasn't your decision to make alone. I held up my hand. Both of you stop. This isn't about your marriage right now. This is about what happens next. I pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. Old habits from documenting insurance settlements. Beverly, I need you to contact the tenants tomorrow and give them proper notice. 60 days in writing. I need you to provide me with access to all accounts related to this property. I need receipts for every expense you claim was house-related. She nodded. Vincent, I need you to help me understand the current condition of the house. What needs to be done to make it move-in ready for me specifically? Dad, it's been ready for 2 years. I built it for you. Wider doorways, grab bars, non-slip flooring. Everything Mom would have needed if. He stopped. If Joyce had lived long enough to need those things. Vincent had been planning for both of us to age in that house together. Roger, I continued, Beverly's brother. I want to meet with him this week. Beverly looked surprised. Eugene, why? Because I want to understand what kind of trouble requires $35,000 to solve. And I want to make sure it's actually solved. It is. Roger's been clean for 8 months. He's working steady, going to counseling. Then he won't mind explaining that to me directly. I stood up and walked to the window outside. I could see Vincent's truck in my apartment complex parking lot. Same truck he'd been driving when he came to help me pack up Joyce's things, when he'd promised to take care of everything so I didn't have to worry. Here's what's going to happen, I said, turning back to them. Beverly, you're going to make this right. Financially, legally, and personally. Vincent, you and I are going to inspect that house this week and make sure it's actually ready for me to live in. What about us? Beverly asked quietly. What about you? Are you going to forgive me? Are we still going to be a family? I looked at this woman who had organized my wife's funeral, who had held my hand during the lawyer meetings, who had made sure I ate regular meals in those first weeks when I forgot to take care of myself. Beverly, forgiveness isn't something I can decide right now while I'm still learning the full extent of what you did. What I can tell you is that I'm not going to destroy this family over it. But things are going to be different. Dennis appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking sleepy. Are you guys done talking? Mom, why are you crying? Beverly wiped her eyes and managed to smile. Just grown-up stuff, baby. Nothing for you to worry about. Grandpa, are you still moving closer to us? I looked at my grandson, this innocent kid who had no idea his family had just imploded and rebuilt itself in the space of one dinner conversation. Yes, Dennis, I think I am. 2 months later, I moved into the house on Maple Street. Vincent came with Dennis, and we carried boxes from the apartment while the boy declared himself the official moving supervisor. He took his job seriously with a clipboard and a red pen, checking off items as we brought them in. Grandpa, this house is way cooler than your old place. It doesn't smell like chemicals, and look, you have a real front porch. The Millers had been understanding when Beverly explained the situation. They'd found a nice rental across town and had even left the vegetable garden they'd planted in the backyard. We hope you enjoy the tomatoes. Amanda Miller had written in a note they left on the kitchen counter. The house has good bones. Someone built it with a lot of love. Vincent had thought about every detail. The kitchen counters were the right height for someone my age. The bathroom had grab bars that looked like they belonged there, not like medical equipment. The covered porch had electrical outlets positioned perfectly for a coffee maker or a radio. Dad, Vincent said as we carried in my reading chair, I want you to know something. When I built this place, I was thinking about you and Mom both. I planned it so you could take care of each other as you got older. I had to stop for a moment and look at the ramp he'd built from the driveway to the front door. Not obvious, just a gentle slope that would make things easier if I ever needed a walker or wheelchair. He'd been planning for contingencies I hadn't even considered. Son, it's perfect. Beverly kept her word about the counseling. Both of them went every Tuesday to a financial advisor who helped couples rebuild trust after money problems. Dennis stayed with me those evenings, and we worked on his homework at the kitchen table Vincent had built specially for the space. Grandpa, why do Mom and Dad have to talk to someone about money? We have money. Sometimes adults need help learning how to talk to each other about important things. Like when I had to learn how to ask for help with math instead of just getting frustrated. Exactly like that. The house felt like home in a way the apartment never had. Not because of the porch or the bigger kitchen, but because it represented something that was always meant to be mine, something I'd had to fight to claim. Beverly and I had a different relationship now. More honest, more careful. She asked permission before making decisions that affected family finances. She included Vincent in every discussion about money. And once a month, she brought Roger by to help with yard work, her way of making sure he remembered what his gambling problem had cost our family. Roger turned out to be a decent kid who'd gotten in over his head. He was working steady at a warehouse job and attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings twice a week. When he apologized to me that first time, standing on my new front porch with his hat in his hands, I could see Beverly in his face. Same stubborn chin, same tendency to take on more responsibility than they could handle. Mr. Hartfield, I never meant for Beverly to put your family through this. I was desperate and I wasn't thinking straight. Roger, desperate people make bad decisions. The question is what you do after you realize you made them. I'm trying to make better ones now. That's all any of us can do. I don't think trust is something you rebuild overnight. I think it's something you earn back one honest conversation at a time, one kept promise at a time. Beverly was working on that, and I could respect the effort even when I was still carrying the wound it was trying to heal. Vincent asked me recently if I was glad I'd investigated instead of just accepting Beverly's story about the house not being ready. We were sitting on the porch watching Dennis practice batting in the front yard. Son, I said, for 30 years I investigated people who thought they could get away with taking what wasn't theirs. I never thought I'd have to investigate my own family. But the truth is, if I hadn't spent those years learning how to find facts, I might still be living in that apartment, wondering why the house was taking so long. He nodded and squeezed my shoulder. I'm proud of how you handled it, Dad. You could have blown up the family. Instead, you fixed it. I didn't fix it. We all fixed it. Together, every morning since I moved in, I sit on this porch with my coffee before anyone else is awake. I watch the sun come through the maple tree in my front yard and think about how sometimes the most important investigations are the ones you never expected to have to conduct. And sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who most need you to ask the hard questions. The tomatoes came in beautifully this summer. I made sauce from them, enough to last through winter. Dennis helped standing on a stool at the kitchen counter Vincent built, learning the recipe Joyce used to make. Some traditions survive everything life throws at you, and some new ones are worth starting. Sometimes the biggest betrayals come from people who think they're protecting you, and sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is refusing to let them get away with it. At 57, I learned that being a good father doesn't end when your kids grow up. Sometimes it means teaching them that love without accountability isn't love at all.